Hey Paul, I'm Propagandist and welcome back to the channel for some more RWBY Volume 3. Now, I'm recording this of course same day as I recorded the Chapter 10 reaction, which I mentioned I wanted to do back last week when you watched Chapter 10 and all that with me. But yeah, so you remember in that previous episode I had some lighting issues? Yeah, it was probably quite entertaining for you lot watching. It wasn't entertaining for me, it bloody annoyed the hell out of me. But I think I found a solution. So I mentioned how I might actually try with my main room light, just seeing if I have that switched on, maybe that will solve things. And certainly the lighting quality is a bit different with it on, but actually this might work, ladies and gentlemen. So we've got a bit of natural light coming through the window, but in order to, you know, make sure that obviously the sunlight isn't sort of hitting me too hard and all that and just washing me out completely, basically I've shut my blinds, activated the main room light, and this may be the way I have to do things today. Now, looking at time, ladies and gentlemen, as I when I record this, it is about sort of 20 minutes to midday. I've recorded obviously chapter 10 today, and if I can sort of record chapter 11 today as well, then I'm just sort of wondering about time. If I have time, I may even be able to record chapter 12 as well, potentially, in which case, in today's recording session, I could very well get all of chapter 3 done and sorted. So, we'll see. If I get time to do that, I might do that, and that'd be kind of cool, because that way then I have actually, technically, you know, a couple of weeks worth of content for Propagandist already recorded and ready to go on the channel and all that, which would be fantastic. So, that's great. You know, if this lighting setup works. See, this is probably what I should have been doing all this time. You know, throughout this reaction series, I should have just been closing my blinds, irrespective of what the light was like outside, and switching on my main room light. But having said that, you know, it's still sunny out there. I wonder what it would be like if the weather was very grey and cloudy. That might be a bit different, but, you know, this should work, basically, ladies and gentlemen, this lighting setup and all that, for this episode at the very least. Even if, you know, the main light being above me does make my forehead look just a little bit shiny. Make me look like I'm oiled up or something. Very weird. But yeah, okay, so chapter 11 of RWBY Volume 3, ladies and gentlemen. What are we anticipating this episode? Well, we're probably going to have a big sort of action sequence from what I remember between one of the paladins that's been taken over by the bad guys as a result of the virus that Roman and Neo have just implanted in one of the Atlas military control systems up on their ship. And so as a result, you know, you get this cool sequence with particularly Velvet, I think, has a moment to shine in this episode. So I mentioned in the last one how basically I feel like that fight sequence between Velvet and the Paladin, including, you know, a few other characters just before that, and of course Weiss getting her summon, that happens this episode, doesn't it? I thought it was going to happen last one, but actually, come to think of it, it didn't. And I forgot to mention that in the outro section of the previous video. But yeah, Weiss is going to have her summon moment, so she's going to get a little bit of development this episode. So, you know, these moments of your character sort of overcoming certain adversaries and certain challenges, I think, back in the day, probably sort of got people into a bit of a false sense of security. Because, yeah, I mean, obviously Penny, of course, has basically been killed at this stage for the first time in the franchise. And, you know, that's a very serious moment, and people are probably like, oh God, are our good guys going to actually emerge out of this okay? And I feel like in this chapter, this whole sort of fight sequence between Velvet and the Paladin, Weiss doing the summon and all that, probably sort of is a moment that I wouldn't be surprised if it lulled a few people into a false sense of security after Penny's death, thinking, okay, you know, it got serious with Penny's death, but I think our heroes are going to be okay. They're going to get things under control as best as they can. And of course, I think that sort of was setting people up a bit, because then, of course, we know what happens after that with Pyrrha, with Yang, with Blake, with Adam, etc., etc. So, yeah. So I think, from what I remember correctly, we're going to have Velvet and the Paladin, we're going to have Weiss with the summoning, and probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it ends, well, no, it probably is going to have Yang facing Adam and what happens there. And I think the episode then ends with Cinder getting down into the vault, doesn't it? Spoilers. I think I remember that's what happens in this episode. And then, of course, chapter 12 has Cinder versus Ozpin, Pyrrha versus Cinder, and then, of course, the sort of the wrap-up with RWBY discovering a bit about herself, to put it that way. But I won't spoil too much of that, because, of course, that's going to be in the next episode and all that. So yeah, hopefully, like I say, this lighting will remain fairly consistent, and not much else for me to say. I think we'll just sort of get straight into it, into the episode, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, about to go into chapter 11. Hopefully, lighting's still fine. Yeah, you know, take a... let's play a drinking game, ladies and gentlemen. Take a shot every time I talk about the friggin' lighting in these videos. God, no, don't do that. You'll probably get liver poisoning and all that. Alright, chapter 11, 3, 2, 1, go. Here we go. So, right, I'm just annoyed that I didn't think of this potential lighting solution much earlier in this series, but then again, you know, not a professional at this kind of thing. I'm just a dude with a camera and all that, who likes to make these videos. Also, just before I started recording this, I had to just quickly get myself a couple of biscuits to eat because I was getting hungry. It being sort of late morning now as I'm going to record this, you know, I'm at that point, because I've been up for a while, where I'm getting hungry and all that. And I was thinking, you know, should I just eat biscuits on camera? And I thought, no, I can't do that. That would be very... I know I'm not exactly professional, but that would be very unprofessional of me. Munching on a freaking rich tea biscuit whilst watching or doing my RWBY reaction and all that. Because, you know, people will probably absolutely hate the crunching sounds of me biting into biscuits whilst doing this. They'll be like, oh god, Red, why? Why are you doing that? Right, prepare yourselves for the hell that awaits in these, well, certainly in this episode and then in the next one, ladies and gentlemen. It's all gonna go down. Here's RWBY. There's a reason why you look so down in that shot. Oh yes, we're also going to get this, aren't we? RWBY, Roman and Neo. Guess who's behind you?
Oh, you cannot be serious.
Yeah, I forgot to actually mention, obviously, Roman
Running away again.
and Neo versus RWBY.
Is that
Of course
what
that's
you
going to
become,
happen.
my love? A coward?
Why are you doing this?
You and I were going to change the world, remember? We were destined to light the fires of revolution.
Consider this the spark.
I'm not running.
You will. But not before you've suffered for your betrayal, my love.
You know, it's an interesting thing here, actually. Sorry, just going to pause for a moment already. But this whole sort of sequence with Adam and Blake, and the fact that, you know, he sort of very easily kicks her down like that. I think I have memories of some individuals, you know, people watching this back in the day being like, okay, what, you know, has Blake just suddenly forgotten all of her fighting skills? But I think, you know, people were basically very surprised at how quickly Blake got taken down there. Well, knocked down there at least. And how Adam actually quite easily handles her, to put it that way, in this episode. But I would say, well, no, there is an explanation for that. Because, you know, you look at her emotional reaction to seeing Adam there, the way she sort of almost not quite freezes up, but I think is in sort of momentary shock that he is there, and that, you know, it's like, oh shit, why is he here? What's going on? It's just that kind of shock moment that probably sort of, like I say, not causes her to freeze up, but sort of maybe it's like an emotional moment where she can't perhaps think straight for a second, which I guess it sort of goes to that question of, you know, when people think about how people respond to traumatic or dangerous situations, obviously everyone thinks of fight or flight, but the thing is, like, fight or flight is actually a very simplistic way of looking at it, because a lot of people actually point out there's not just two Fs there's also two other Fs that people sometimes do, one being fawn and the other of course being freeze. You know, not everyone necessarily, when faced with a stressful situation, will immediately either run away or try and fight. Some people will just freeze up for a moment and not know what to do, and they'll sort of panic. And yeah, like you could, you know, there's a great, you know, there was a great video I once watched on YouTube. What was the name of the guy? It was a TED Talk. It was a guy. I think his name was Daryl Davies or Daryl Dixon, something like that, who was a Black American musician and journalist, I think, who did this incredible thing of he actually got an interview with a Ku Klux Klan leader, and you know, he was talking about how when he arranged this, basically everyone around him was saying, do not talk to this guy, do not mess with this guy, he is dangerous. And he was talking about how he set up the interview and how during the interview there was this moment of tension where he suspected that this Ku Klux Klan guy was about to attack him. And he talked obviously a bit about the sort of fight or flight response and how actually, you know, there's also other Fs as well. There's other things people do when faced with stressful situations. And he sort of explained it how, you know, some people freeze and you could be literally hitting them over the head with a weapon and they will not do anything. They will just sit there and take it because they're so sort of emotionally shocked in that moment that they don't know what to do and they literally can't think straight. And so I sort of took it in this scene that that's kind of what's happening with Blake for a moment, not entirely freezing up, but in her moment of shock she's sort of trying to grapple with, how do I respond to this situation? And as a result, that's why Adam is able to just sort of very easily kick her down, because you know, it's an emotional moment for her. This is something she wasn't expecting to happen, and so as a result it's taking her completely by surprise. It's, you know, it's blindsided her. So that's why she kind of, you know, Adam quite easily handles her in this moment. So just something that I thought was interesting. 3, 2, 1, zoom. Go on, BLC.
But not before you've suffered for your betrayal, my love.
Yeah, the whole my love, my darling stuff, I think obviously split the fandom a bit, but we might talk about that later. See, here's your moment where everyone gets to be cool. You have all of them taken out, and then you just have Flint in the background. Damn, he's strong if he can stand there for a few seconds. Oof.
Nora, no! This is bad.
Well, I guess now's a better time than any. Velvet!
Really?
See, this is
Just make them count.
just going to pause before Velvet has her cool moment. You see, this is something actually which I will make as a slight criticism of the animation team here. And this is something that persists not just in Volume 3, but you do sometimes see it in later volumes as well. Characters with ranged weapons, so, you know, guns, etc., whatever, just sort of standing around in the open and firing at enemies, whereas what you would actually do in a situation like this is, surely, if you've got a ranged weapon, you would not just stand in the open where your adversary can easily see you and target you. You would actually probably find cover somewhere, because, you know, in this shot, granted there's probably not a lot of cover, but there are trees, there are benches, and there are, you know, you can just see in the foreground there what looks like the edge of a sort of pond or a fountain that has like a wall around it. So there are bits of cover here, and that's the thing. If I was the animator here in this shot, I would be careful about having characters just standing in the open, because it looks a bit off, I would say. I would try and sort of position characters particularly characters who have ranged weapons, in cover, so that they're firing from covered positions, because that's really what you would do. I mean, granted, obviously this is the world of Remnant, where they have, you know, aura semblances, so they have a degree of protection, so you could argue to some extent maybe they can stand in the open. But I feel like even then, even if you have aura, that doesn't mean you would necessarily disregard what would be usual standard, I guess, what's the word, protocol almost, for if you're in a firefight with someone. Yeah, that's just something I will make as a minor criticism. And like I say, this is something that you do see in subsequent volumes. I seem to have recollections of this being the case sometimes in Volume 5 as well, where, for example, like White Fangoons or, you know, random characters with ranged weapons would just sort of run out into the open, then stand there and fire. And you'd be like, you wouldn't do that. Why are you doing that? You're just making yourself a big target. I mean, obviously, with characters who have melee weapons, it's understandable if they're out in the open, because they kind of need to be. They need to be closing in to actually attack. But characters with ranged weapons, I would say, shouldn't be standing in the open. They should be behind cover, so they can fire and snipe, that kind of thing. Just a minor criticism, like I say. It doesn't detract much from the episode overall. It's still a great episode. But if I was the animator, that is what I would have probably chosen to do. 3, 2, 1, resume. Okay, Velvet, here's your moment. Your moment to be cool.
What are you doing? She's going to get hurt.
Just watch.
Thankfully, the enemies stand around politely as well. It is hard, though, I imagine, to actually animate this kind of scene. Because obviously you need your characters sometimes to say things so that the audience kind of, has a clue as to what's going on. You don't necessarily need to fully explain what's happening to them. But it helps. And so you need to find that balance between having those shots where a character can talk versus making sure that it doesn't just look like everything in the background suddenly comes to a halt just to enable them to talk. You know what I'm saying? So Velvet probably is one of the most OP characters in Beacon, based on the fact she has this weapon. I mean, granted, she probably has to, I think, refill it every time with her camera. But, yeah. She gets a good array of weapons like that. She's pretty damn powerful. Oh, God.
Velvet!
Here we go, Weiss. Now it's your turn to be cool. She's doing a Naruto run. It looks like she's doing a bit of a Naruto run. There you go. You started to get your summon. Not quite entirely there, but it's volume 4 there, really. We'll get that. Well, nice to see Velvet. Sorry, I nearly called Velvet Volume. Nice to see Velvet getting a picture of Weiss's summon. If we ever get a volume 10, do you reckon that'll come back in? Velvet will do a imitation of Weiss's summon. Okay, Roman and Neo are a very good fighting team here.
Little Red, you are just determined to be the hero of Vale, aren't you?
What are you doing? Without these ships, the Grim will destroy everything.
That's the plan!
I mean, I say Roman and Neo are an effective fighting team. It's mostly Neo who does it, but
Why? What do you
Roman
get
does
out of
work
it?
well with her.
You're asking the wrong questions, Red. It's not what I have to gain. It's that I can't afford to lose.
Ooh. Ow. That kick to the back has got to be real nasty. Okay, Roman's just showing off there, doing an over-the-shoulder gunshot.
I'll give you a gambling man, but even I know there's some bets you just don't take. Like it or not, the people that hired me are going to change the world. You can't stop them. I can't stop them. You know the old saying, if you can't beat them...
Oh, there she goes.
I don't care what you say.
Ooh, it's an interesting move he's got.
You got Spirit Red, but this is the real world. The real world is cold. The real world doesn't care about spirit.
I think this fight sequence is also quite interesting in another sense, which I'll get to in a second.
As for me, I'll do what I do best.
I actually do like this fight sequence a lot,
Steal,
particularly for Roman's monologue. And there he goes. The end of Roman Torchwick right there. Yeah, let's just... sorry, I'm just going to take a pause for a moment. So what I mean with this fight sequence, why I find it sort of interesting, is because not just because, you know, it flows very well, it's really tense and heart-pounding, but also, obviously there's Roman's monologue there, which is really fascinating and just a great character moment for him. But also, you know, it kind of shows, I think, that Roman is sometimes, I think, a lot better of a fighter than perhaps we realise he is. Because, of course, obviously he fought Blake and Son in Volume 1, and he pulled out quite well against both of them. But then, of course, in Volume 2, he faces Blake again on the train, but he actually gets taken down quite quickly. And so, you know, I think a lot of people might look at that and think that, you know, Roman, he's got a bit of fighting skill, but he's not kind of a complete warrior. But then you have this sequence where even after Neo gets sort of removed from the fight, he still manages to handle Ruby and actually take her down, well, put her basically on the floor quite quickly, to put it that way. And so it makes you think that, you know, you might sort of look at that and you might think about the other fight sequences he's been involved in previous volumes. You might think it seems like his fighting skill is very inconsistent, but actually I would say it's not that at all, because if you think about it, wasn't, you know, his whole plan in Volume 2 actually that he would get caught, because, you know, Cinder's plan requires him to get caught, so therefore he holds back in Volume 2 to enable Blake to actually beat him, because the whole plan is that she apprehends him, takes him in, you know, he gets then taken in by the Atlas military, meaning he's then positioned where he needs to be in preparation for this volume. So I think, you know, Roman is one of those characters who is a good fighter, he just doesn't advertise it, but you have these moments where actually he does reveal that he is quite tough. It's just that, you know, he then gets completely ripped apart by a Grim in a moment of distraction and all that. So, just an interesting thought. I always, well, I just wanted to make clear. 3, 2, 1, resume. Better get Crescent Rose. Not to waste all your bullets doing that. See, even Carden gets a moment to shine, even if it is just a couple of seconds. Here he is. Yeah, just say that again. Here he is.
This area is secure. We need to... Crow, this isn't my doing.
He's not after you, buddy.
You idiot. I know you didn't do this. So what now, General?
Someone's done the impossible and gained control of my machines. And that enormous Grim seems to be fixated on the school. Glinda, form up with the local huntsman and establish a safe zone here in Vale. We need to evacuate Beacon. Crow, I'm leaving that to you and my men. I still need to get to my ship.
Well, speaking of which...
Well, it won't be much of a walk.
So that obviously takes out the Atlas soldier robots, okay? And this thing too. We still have Blake and Yang and Adam though to deal with yet.
That went better than expected.
You're okay. Have you heard from Ruby? What about Blake?
She went after an alpha. And some members of the White Fang.
You look for Ruby. I'll meet up with Blake.
Not good. Huh.
What is this place?
Is Yang actually going to
It's a type of vault.
have her moment this episode,
Been here
or
before?
she might do? I don't know.
What would this school need to...
God, it's been so long since I watched Volume 3. I can't remember the order of things sometimes.
Who?
Jean.
Pyrrha, get to the pods.
I can feel the tension rising.
If you'd like to help, you can stand guard here.
Know what's coming.
What do we do now?
We do nothing. You, Ms. Nikos, have a choice to make.
I know what's going to happen now. I'm already feeling quite tense.
This could have been our day. Can't you see that?
I never wanted this. I wanted equality. I wanted peace.
What you want is impossible. But I understand. Because all I want is you, Blake. And as I set out upon this world and deliver the justice mankind so greatly deserves, I will make it my mission to destroy everything you love.
Yeah, I think Yang is going to have a moment this episode. I say her moment. Not in a good way.
Her.
Oh boy.
Are you ready? I need to hear you say it.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Nikos.
Pyrrha!
You should be watching the entrance, Johnny boy.
So sorry.
And boom. There we go. Well, I got the timing on that perfect, didn't I? Well.
Huh? Get away from her! Oh, please.
Yeah, there you go. It's not a light-hearted show anymore now. Ouch. Yeah. Still feels tense. Despite the fact I know what's going to happen.
Stay back! Take Jean and get out of here. Find Glinda, Ironwood, Crow. Bring them here right away.
I'm so tense I'm actually shaking a bit.
But I can help.
You'll only get in the way.
God, this was such a good volume though. It really was. Well, yeah, looking at time, we may have time after this to record chapter 12 as well.
Why must you hurt me, Blake?
I think that moment really scared a lot of RWBY fans, didn't it?
This whole time, right beneath our feet. She was right about you. Such arrogance.
And that's where it's going to end. Yep. I remember that's where it ends in this particular episode. Oh my goodness. Those are some old Roman Torchwick concepts. He could have been a clown man, ladies and gentlemen. Wouldn't that have been quite something? Well, a lot to unpack out of that episode, which we'll get to in a moment, just after this credit sequence. Oh boy. Yeah, still as tense watching it now as it was back in the day when I first watched this. I mean, not obviously as shocking, I would say, but because obviously I know what's going to happen. All right, let's just have a jump on. I'll give my thoughts in a moment. Right, well, I think the good news is that, barring a little bit of fluctuation, the lighting has actually been fairly consistent in this episode, hasn't it? At least it's been consistent in the sense of it hasn't gone completely crazy, as it did last episode, and ended up affecting the quality of the video and all that. So I'm kind of glad of that. So, in future, if we get a really sunny day, and I'm trying to record face cam content like this, close the blinds, so a bit of sun gets through, but also then switch on my main light in the room, and that seems to be better than just trying to do it with inconsistent sunlight levels coming in through the window and all that. So thank God that seems to have worked. Now, yeah, I mean, I've already talked a bit throughout that reaction there about things that I thought were very interesting, things that I thought were very standout. So, indeed, you know, Velvet and Weiss had their moment to be cool. They had a moment there where they probably, you know, back in the day, lulled audiences into a bit of a false sense of security, thinking, okay, the serious bit's over, the good guys are definitely going to win this, they're going to be fine, you know, surely they've got plot armour and all that. But then no, Yang happens, and yes, like I say, as I was going through that, I was definitely sort of like still shaking a bit. I mean, still a little bit am now, because the thing is, obviously, when I first watched this many years ago, and then you get that scene with what happens to Yang, that is like, you know, that was shocking when that happened, because that was like, oh shit, you know, these characters don't necessarily have complete plot armour here. Bad stuff can really happen to them, and is going to happen to them in this franchise. So, you know, that was such a moment, that was, back in the day, and it really sort of, I think, gripped a lot of people and made people realise that, you know, this show is about to go in a whole other direction. It's gonna, you know, it's not going to be that light-hearted, sometimes slightly comedic show that it has been in volumes 1 and 2. It's very much now going to go in a darker direction, and, you know, I think a lot of people were all there for it and all that. So, yeah, like I say, you know, it doesn't, that scene obviously doesn't quite have the same shock factor now, knowing obviously what happens, but it is still very tense, which is saying something. Like I say, considering I've watched it before and I know what's going to happen, and it still, you know, gets my heart pounding a little bit. So I suppose that's a bit of a testament, really, to how effective the scene is, to put it that way. So, real good stuff there. And like I say, I think the other big standout point for me is just what I was talking about with Roman Torchwick. The fact that I think, as a character, he's probably a lot better of a fighter than he necessarily advertises himself to be. As we saw, obviously, in Volume 1. And then, of course, Volume 2, I think, probably sort of tricked a lot of people, possibly back in the day, when he faced Blake on the train and she beat him quite easily. Probably tricked a lot of people into thinking, oh, well, you know, he's maybe not that great of a fighter. But, you know, the fact that he, with Neo's help first, and then even on his own, he was able to actually deal with RWBY quite quickly, suggests that, you know, he's a lot tougher perhaps than he looks. It's just that he doesn't necessarily advertise it. So, indeed, because obviously in Volume 2, part of the plan Cinder had was that he would probably get captured, so that then he could get on board an Atlas ship and be in a position for what happens in these episodes. So, you know, it's all part of thinking about the villain's plan and how everything interconnects across the different series early on in RWBY. That's the thing to sort of bear in mind, I do think. So, yeah, I mean, there's that, basically. So now that leaves chapter 12, which I'm actually probably going to keep this outro section fairly short, to be honest, so that I have time to record it, because it's only just gone midday as of when I record this. So, you know, I have a little bit of time before lunch. I probably could record chapter 12 and thus complete the bulk of volume 3, in essence, ladies and gentlemen. So I think I'll do that. So what can we expect in chapter 12? Well, we can obviously expect Pyrrha and Cinder. Obviously there's an opening with Ozpin and Cinder, so there's that. And then of course we have RWBY trying to go up to save Pyrrha, and the you know, bit about Silver Eyes and all that, and then obviously the wrap up with the reveal of Salem. So that's what we've got to look forward to next time, ladies and gentlemen. So it's going to be very interesting. This has been, you know, such a great volume to rewatch and all that, ladies and gents. You can definitely see how Team RWBY throughout this have come leaps and bounds in terms of their skill. Granted, there's still the odd thing, like I say, that, you know, they could have done differently. Obviously, there's the odd aspect of slight odd. What's the word I'm trying to look for? You know, the scene with Mercury and RWBY in the corridor off the Colosseum. Obviously, there was that, you know, which is a little bit ropey because of the sort of positioning of characters, that kind of thing. But, you know, then obviously there was the thing I mentioned this episode about how characters with guns sometimes just seem to sort of stand around in the open, when really I would say it would probably look better if they were sort of moving and trying to get to cover, firing, moving again, cover. But, you know, it is what it is, and it doesn't detract much from the episode overall, I would say. It's just one of those minor criticisms in terms of something they could probably, Team RWBY could probably have added to the animation back in the day, just for, you know, a bit of a sense of characters are not just standing around, they're actually in motion, they're fighting, they're actually acting, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But, you know, volume 3 is still very good overall, and this is still a very enjoyable episode in spite of that minor potential criticism. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, I know usually I spend, you know, anywhere up to 10 or more minutes in these outro sections just talking about things we've seen in the episode, things to expect in the next one, etc., that kind of stuff. But like I say, I'm not going to do that so much this episode because, you know, I want to see if I can save a bit of time before lunchtime to react to and record my, you know, my Let's Watch of Chapter 12 and all that, and thus get Volume 3 done. Then after that, obviously, there'll probably be a bit of supplementary material we'll react to. Then we'll get into Volume 4 and all. So I'll talk a bit about Volume 4 preemptively, probably at the end of the next episode, once we've, you know, done our reaction to Chapter 12. So you got that to look forward to then. And other than that, you know, thank you for joining me for this, and hope you're all looking forward to Chapter 12 as well. I certainly am. So, you know, there's going to be a lot going on in that chapter, potentially, that we can talk about, so we'll get to that next week, you know, next weekend and all that. Obviously, it's next weekend for you lot. For me, it's going to be right away. Yeah, but as usual, I will just, you know, remind people, please do keep, you know, posting in the comments your thoughts on the episodes, and of course, recommendations in terms of things I can react to, more broadly to do with RWBY, that might be of interest. I haven't actually checked the comments on Chapter 9 just yet. I need to do that, because it might well be the case that people have already started leaving on there. But if they haven't, once again, I just ask for that, just so I've got constant reminders coming in of things that might be interesting to react to as part of this series. So yeah, thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, and here's to, you know, looking ahead to the end of Volume 3. So we'll get to that then in due course, in which case it's time for me to just wrap up here. So thank you for joining me once again. And as usual, Strategist is my main channel. Propagandist obviously is my second channel. Strategist being my main channel, where I do a lot of gaming content. So there may be something over there that interests you. Link in the video description. If you enjoyed, you know, please do leave a like. It's always appreciated and all that. And I'll see you next time. So see you then, ladies and gentlemen.